What's up everyone, Lance Hedrick here, and today we're gonna do something a little spicy. As you saw in the thumbnail, I'm making the conjecture that cappuccinos did not originate in Italy. Now hang on with me before you hit dislike and freak out and come at me in the comments. Hey, hear me out. When I say this, I'm not talking about what we know from the 50s, 60s, 70s cappuccino. I'm talking about the original term, cappuccino. So in this video, we're gonna trace back the history of the cappuccino, and I'm going to show some of the ways people around the world currently observe this drink that is taking over so many. All right, so in about, we're gonna go way back in time. We're gonna go back to, let's say, the 13th century with Saint Francis of Assisi. Now, Saint Francis was known as an animal lover, an extraordinarily peaceful and humble human being who put his faith above everything else. And in that sense of humility, he would wear wool clothing. All right, and then in centuries following, these different monks over time would emulate that practice of wearing wool robes, but some of them would change things. They would bleach or dye with color or do something else to the robes themselves. Coming up to these Capuchin monks, or Kapuzin, in Vienna, who would take it and they dyed it a certain color and would wear this colored robe that looked like coffee and milk kind of combined, this really soft brown color. Now what does Capuchin or Kapuzin mean? It means hood, okay? So it's referring to the hoods, that term is, but the color became so synonymous with these monks that people began to refer to the color as Capuchin or Kapuzin, depending on the area, right? So Austria and the Viennese coffee shop scene in the 1700s, they started to make these drinks that they referred to as Kapuzinar, okay? Now this referred to the color of those drinks. What the drink was, and I'm about to show you, was coffee in the way they made it then, which was bringing the beans to a boil, okay? They would take that coffee, which this obviously, I did not bring beans to a boil. This is just couple shots of espresso, but we're gonna act like it's beans to a boil. Then what they would do is they would whip some cream, all right? Because cream was easier to store. Nowadays we're using fresh milk. That was not a thing for a long time. They would use full cream and they would add it on there, but I don't have time to whisk cream, and I can't let my cute little latte hand get offended by that. So we're just gonna do cream like this, okay? And then in about 1805, we have a document that describes a Kapuzinar, and at that time, it describes it as having spices or chocolate powder added, which means cinnamon or chocolate powder. So I'm gonna take some chocolate powder, and I'm just gonna let's get a little pat on the booty. Like so. And here we have what is actually the original cappuccino, which is coffee that was brought to a boil, which was changed in the 1700s. That was the Ottoman Empire's way of brewing coffee. And about the 1700s, you have in England and in France, people began to filter the coffee, which was giving a nicer cup. And so this term actually comes out, the Kapuzinar actually comes out right around that same era of when that transition happened in England and in France. All right? So this is what you had starting in the 1700s in Viennese coffee shops, the Kapuzinar. And this made its way to northern Italy, which at the time was owned or run by Austria. And so you have the Kapuzinar that kind of took over that area where people were making this coffee, adding cream and shaving chocolate or chocolate shavings or cinnamon on top. And it was named after those monks, all right, because of the color, and that color became synonymous with the monks. So that's what this is. Let's take a sip. Of course it's delicious, it's whipped cream, but I just inhaled Coke. I can wash it down. All right, we're all better. So that is technically the origin story of the cappuccino. Now, let's fast forward though to 1901 when the patent on espresso machines came about. And in Italy, people slowly started to get these espresso machines. Now, if you remember from my video on manual lever machines, the origin of it, there was no pump. So espresso is coming out at 1 to 2 bar of pressure, around 1.5 bar of pressure. So you're not getting crema, you're not getting that concentrated drink, you're essentially just getting a new way of making coffee. All right, and it was referred to as espresso. Then we fast forward to 1948, where Gaggia created that first lever machine with the capability of producing 9 bar of pressure. And they soon after began to utilize this type of espresso in the cappuccinos. And that is where the actual cappuccino did derive. So, all that to say, technically, yes, the cappuccino as we know it was found in Italy, but the name and the inspiration for what would soon to become known as the cappuccino that we now know and love started as the Kapuzinar in Vienna and the surrounding areas. Okay, I know, crazy. Some of you probably knew that. I know this is still a drink served in Austria and surrounding countries, so some of you watching from those countries probably like, well, yeah, that's served right down the street. Well, a lot of us don't know that. I didn't know that, and I'm sure a lot of people who are down-liking this video right now did not know that. So that is the first thing I kind of wanted to go over, was this slow transition from this Viennese drink in the 1700s up until people began to change it. Now, in Italy, the cappuccino began to be made with that espresso machine that was patented in 1901 when they began to matriculate into the market, into coffee shops. It was so bulky and expensive, though, that it was relegated to this coffee shop culture where people would come together, they'd drink cafe lattes, cappuccini, espresso, and different things like that, where they would sit and read and discuss over these delicious beverages. And then there's an argument to be made that it first came to America in 1927 at Cafe Reggie up in New York, but that's just speculation. But anyway, it became a global phenomenon once these machines became more ubiquitous and easier to obtain and maintain. They became, so you have really in the 80s when it started to blow up in the USA and around the world. So, cappuccino started out as something along the lines of this, and then moved into something that we know now, which has different interpretations around the world, which is the next thing I want to get into. What is a cappuccino in the modern context? Because we have so many different interpretations that you ask 5 people on the street, at least here in the USA, and you're going to get 5 different interpretations of what a cappuccino is, mostly dictated by this kind of fast food type of coffee shop wave that happened here, where people took this Italian drink and they supersized it, right? So you have places over here, and this may shock some of you from other countries, where they're serving 16-ounce cappuccinos. But we know that's not true to history. So let's talk about what I think are the 2 legitimate ways of making cappuccinos, though I'm not going to delegitimize, you know, if some of you like your 16-ounce cappuccinos, I'm not going to delegitimize that as something you enjoy. I will say it doesn't align with what a cappuccino is, and so to me it seems to be more of a latte with a lot of foam. Anyway, no need to start a bickering war over that. What we're going to do is we're going to look at the 2 ways that I see cappuccinos practiced. One is going to be the traditional way. So the way that kind of started in Italy around the 1950s, which if you remember me talking in my last video about Sprovers, the shots with the Gaggia 9-bar lever machine, when they started, people did 30 milliliter shots, so essentially single shots, all right? They did this because that was pretty much all you could really pull out of that machine with the labor-intensive aspect of those labor machines to hit 9-bar. So you're doing 30 milliliter shots, and then you're filling up essentially a 5 to 7 ounce mug, or around a 200 milliliter mug with milk and foam. So what essentially you have is a single shot of espresso in a mug, something like this. This is 6.7 ounces, around 220 or 230 milliliters. You put a single shot of espresso, and then the rest of the way is about half and half foam and steamed milk. So you have about 2 centimeters of foam, 2 centimeters of steamed milk, and then some espresso. So now I'm going to show you how to make both of those styles of cappuccinos. I'm going to use these double-walled glass cups so you can see the amount of foam in both, and I'm going to show you the process. So one is going to have that thick layer of foam that we have to scoop out, and one is going to be that microfoam where we can pour some latte art. And these are kind of the 2 observed styles of cappuccini around the world. So let's go ahead and give a look at that. I'm going to do a single shot in both. With the modern one, it depends on what shop you're at. A lot of places do only double shots. Some people do single shots just to save coffee, so I'm not wasting any. I'm going to split a double, so a single shot in each. It's going to do the same thing. It's going to give us the same end result, which is looking at the foam. So I'm going to clap, and then we'll be ready with our first pour. All right, so for this, I'm going to create, firstly, the traditional style of cappuccino, which is going to be heavy on the foam. Now, all you have to do for this is you have to underdose the milk just a little bit, and we're going to stretch a lot more aggressively than we normally would. And here I'm going to link my milk steaming video so that you're able to watch that and understand my approach to steaming. So I'm going to do the halfway and a quarter trick. I'm going to start, and I'm going to stretch really aggressively. You can hear. I'm stretching really aggressively, and I'm allowing the whirl to occur the whole time because we're creating a lot of bubbles, but we're wanting to whip them all out. And it's imperative, again, to stop steaming once it's matching the temp of your hand. Otherwise, you're going to struggle getting those bubbles out that you've created. All right. And then any top bubbles, you just want to pop those out because you want to get a nice, smooth texture. So it should be thick and clumpy like that. Pillowy. Now we're going to take a spoon, and the first thing we're going to do is we're going to pour and hold back the foam. Try to not create too many bubbles in there so it's nice and pretty. And then I like to just scoop and place right in the center. Just scoop, place, scoop, place, scoop, place, scoop, place, boop-a-dee-da. I've got a scoop, place, blah, 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 blah. Oompa, loompa, doompa-dee-da. Anyway, here we go. And a cupping spoon does really nice to scoop the foam. You just want to scrape that foam off the top. And then when you're near the top, just kind of top it off with some of more of that milk until you get that nice billowing brown ring at the top, which I think is so beautiful. And there we have that traditional cappuccino. And as you see here, we have 2 centimeters of foam. See that? I'm going to bring that up so you can get it. Boom. And then in a lot of places around the world, they like to finish off these cappuccinos with a little bit of cocoa powder, so why not do that as well? And there we have a traditional cappuccino. Delicious, velvety, smooth texture. Now, one of the big complaints and the reason people have moved to a more modern style of cappuccino is because this foam isn't integrating with the milk, with the espresso. So what you're getting is just a lot of milk and then a lot of espresso. And that's not the greatest. And there can be an argument made for a taste difference because what it takes to create foam, it's taking away from the rest of the milk, and there could be an imbalance of taste, not only of texture, but of taste. Now, this is something I do enjoy on occasion, but it's because I love froth. I love foam. Okay, so that's the first one. Now we're going to take the second one, and I need to clean out my pitcher and steam once more. All right, so on this one, we're being a lot more tight with our stretching. We're not being as aggressive. We're wanting really tight microfoam. We don't want any visible bubbles. There's not many in that traditional one, but there's enough to warrant a texture difference. This one, we're wanting it to be really tight microfoam. So we've got that steamed, and now we're going to pour. So here we are, and we're going to give it a little pour. Fill that up. I felt it was only appropriate to give it a monk's head after our little history lesson. So as you see here, we have about 1 centimeter of foam, and you see it's cascading down, the foam is separating, but you see there's 1 centimeter of foam there. Whereas on this one, we have about 2 centimeters. So you can see those side by side. Traditional, modern. All right, so that is the cappuccino. It started in Vienna, Austria as the Kapuzinar, which was that coffee that was boiled with water, and then they added some kind of like whipped cream, full cream on it, and they added some cinnamon, some spices. Of course, that may not have been the original. The earliest documentation we have of that recipe is around 1805, but around that time is also when they transitioned actually to that filtered style coffee. So you probably had places who were boiling the coffee with the water. You probably had places using filter type coffee, but we can't really know for sure. We just know that those two events aligned up or about simultaneously. And then as you can continue going forward in history, you have people continuing the observation of the Kapuzinar, and you had other types of drinks that started to crop up as well. It wasn't until about 1901 with the introduction of the espresso machine where you started to get a more tailored style of cappuccino, and then around the 50s in Italy, yes, in Italy, so this is where the cappuccino did derive. In about the 1950s, you have people starting to use the concentrated espresso that was much more potent and using frothed milk. And once the machines were able to steam the milk in themselves, is when you had the full contraption like we do now. Isn't it great being in the 2020s where we have these accessible espresso machines at home and we can make, in the matter of minutes, a traditional and a modern, and that silly one I did earlier with my delicious whipped cream. All right, well, I hope you enjoyed this video. I would really appreciate it if you gave the video a like and maybe hit the subscribe button for more of these. I'm planning on doing histories of different drinks so that we can all be on the kind of a similar playing field. You're not surprised when you go to a shop whenever you get one or the other of these, or maybe even a Kapuzinar, depending on where you're at in the world. Yeah, I also have a Patreon, and the Patreon allows me to have this nice production. It allows me to get equipment for videos, and there's a really cool Discord group that we have connected through the Patreon where I converse with all these people. Right now we're almost to 300 Patreons, and it's really, really fun. There's people from all over the world in it. I just gave away the first piece of equipment in a contest on there, so someone is going to receive that Gaggia Classic Pro that I modded into a flow controlling beast with a PID controller, and you can see that video here on what I did to that machine. But someone down in Brazil won that, and I'm really excited for them. But we have more giveaways or contests on the way, and so join the Patreon, hit the subscribe button, follow me on Instagram, and converse down in the comments below. Your thoughts on this video, your thoughts on the cappuccino. Did you know this background? Did you not know this background? Was this shocking, or was this yesterday's news? Thank you so much, and I hope my clickbait title did not offend you too sorely. And that is it for me. One more slurp of whipped cream. Cheers. I love whipped cream.